Autonomic dysfunction is present in nearly 70% of patients living with long COVID. POTS and ME/CFS have been dismissed as psychiatric disorders for decades, but a new paper just this year said that this explanation is wrong. Not partially wrong, but fundamentally wrong. Hi, my name is Dr. Wada. I'm a quadruple board certified allergy, immunology, lifestyle medicine physician. I live with an autoimmune disease called Sjögren's and dysautonomia, and so I understand what it feels like to live on both sides of the exam room. Today, I'm walking you through research that was published in February of 2026, and it makes the case for something that patients who live with POTS, ME/CFS, and long COVID, that they already know, right? These are not psychiatric problems. They are neuroimmune disorders. And understanding that changes everything about the conversation that you're going to have with your care team. So I want you to save this before your next appointment. And okay, let's dive into it. A quick note, this is not medical advice. This is for educational purposes, but we are going to go through this research and then talk a little bit of commentary along the way. So what are we actually talking about? There are 3 conditions. I'm going to go through each of them in 30 seconds or less because I want to make sure we're starting from the same place. POTS. POTS is a type of dysautonomia, meaning your autonomic nervous system is not working quite right. What happens in this situation is that your heart rate jumps more than 30 beats per minute just from position changes, from standing up, might get dizzy, have palpitations, brain fog, fatigue, and it has nothing to do with how much sleep you got. ME/CFS is a condition that is known for causing profound fatigue. It doesn't improve with rest. Symptoms will worsen after even seemingly minor activity, and orthostatic intolerance is one of its diagnostic criteria. And lastly, long COVID. These are symptoms that persist for at least 3 months after a SARS-CoV-2 infection, and POTS and ME/CFS are 2 of the common presentations we've seen in patients living with long COVID. 3 different conditions that are all intertwined, and they have similar underlying biology, and we're going to talk about what that perfect storm that's driving all of this is. All right, so this is the heart of what I want you to understand from today. Across all 3 conditions, researchers identified the same overlapping forces driving the dysfunction. Not one cause, not one raindrop to chase, an entire storm where multiple symptoms collide and amplify each other. What I started to notice in my own patients, kind of coming out of 2020 was, one, I was seeing a whole lot more folks who were dealing with signs and symptoms of dysautonomia, profound fatigue, symptoms that looked and sounded a lot like mast cell disorders, and also autoimmune disorders. And paper is continuing to add to the science behind really trying to fully understand what is going on under the hood in these patients that we've been seeing an increased number of over the last 6 or so years. So the first force is a misbehaving immune system. Multiple studies have now found similar antibodies in POTS, ME/CFS, and long COVID patients. These antibodies target the receptors that control parts and pieces of your autonomic nervous system. These receptors and these parts of your autonomic nervous system regulate heart rate, blood pressure, vascular tone. And so when the immune system produces signals against those receptors, that whole regulatory system starts to break down. Now, your immune system is not trying to attack you. It's trying to protect you. It's using tools that it has in response to signals it received from an infection, maybe in the context of chronic stress, other insults from our environment, but those tools are aimed at the wrong target. And the result is that your body then cannot regulate itself properly. The second and related force is neuroinflammation. Using 7T MRI scanning, researchers found structural changes in a specific area of the brainstem where the vagal nuclei sit. The vagus nerve is the primary communication line between your brain and your autonomic nervous system. And inflammation at that site then disrupts the downstream regulation of heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, bladder function, and immune response. Not separately, but together because they share the same control center. Now, the third force is a cellular energy crisis. Your mitochondria, which are the energy engines of your cell, are not working efficiently. They're not working effectively. And this is not a problem with willpower. The research is clear that immune dysfunction and persistent inflammation directly impair mitochondrial function. And there may be a bit of a back and forth there that mitochondrial function, when impaired, can also contribute to immune dysfunction and persistent inflammation. A lot of these pathways are a bit of a snowball effect where they're going both ways. And the fatigue, it's not in your head, it's in your cells. And you didn't purposely cause this, right? The fourth force that we need to talk about is reduced blood flow to the brain. When you stand up and blood pools downwards because it's not receiving the right signals to constrict your blood vessels and keep it going to your brain, less blood reaches your brain. And that's where problems with brain fog, difficulty concentrating, finding your words, that's where those sorts of symptoms can start to occur. These aren't a psychiatric problem, they're a vascular problem and a blood flow problem, and it can affect our executive functioning. All of this is held together by autonomic dysfunction, a nervous system that has lost the ability to regulate the basics: heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, digestion, breathing. And when that system is dysregulated, all of those other functions can be affected simultaneously. So they're not separate problems, they're one storm showing up in different parts of the body. And you can't fix a storm just by chasing one raindrop. And that's exactly what happens in our healthcare system when each specialist is trying to treat their own little piece of the pie. So why did the system keep missing this? Well, the next part is important, and I want to try to do my best to be precise because timeline matters. POTS and ME/CFS have been misunderstood and dismissed for decades. Long COVID is obviously a newer entity. It's only existed since 2020, but it also followed the same dismissal pattern almost immediately. In all three cases, the medical assumption was the same. A triggering event occurred, the body recovered physically, but the patient continued to produce symptoms. And since routine tests kept coming back normal, there was no black and white or biologic basis for the illness. So the patient was considered to just be perpetuating sick behavior. That framework causes real harm, and the authors of this paper are calling it out and saying, this needs to be explicitly abandoned. The problem was never that the biology wasn't there. The problem was that the tools being used to look for it were the wrong tools. Standard labs don't test for autoantibodies against autonomic receptors. A typical MRI doesn't show brainstem neuroinflammation, and a typical cardiology workup doesn't measure mast cell mediators or some of the other hormonal changes that may occur with those position changes associated with POTS and other types of dysautonomia. So the researchers compared POTS and ME/CFS specifically to the history of multiple sclerosis, which was once dismissed as hysterical paralysis in women before the biology was identified and it was reclassified as a neuroimmune disease. They argue that POTS, ME/CFS, and now long COVID are at that same inflection point now. So what was called anxiety was maybe really autonomic dysfunction. What was called deconditioning was mitochondrial failure. And what was called all in your head was really neuroinflammation. So I want to take this back. I know a lot of you that follow for our Sjögren's content, and I talk a lot about Sjögren's disease because it is so important to me, both personally and professionally. And so I want to tie this in for those of you listening who have that going on too. This paper does not just classify POTS, ME/CFS, and long COVID as neuroimmune disorders. It places them in the same category as the neurologic complications of Sjögren's disease. It's the same category and it's the same type of classification. So if you have Sjögren's that is driving your dysautonomia, driving your POTS symptoms, driving your ME/CFS like fatigue or your post-viral symptoms that never fully resolved, again, these are not separate storms in the same body. They are all sharing the same terrain. They share similar immune mechanisms, and they share that the autonomic nervous system is the common target. A plan that addresses only one piece of the storm is going to end up leaving gaps. And the research is now supporting so much of what all of you have been shouting from the rooftops and describing as your lived experiences for years. So I'm going to take a quick pause because if this terrain is yours, I want to tell you about the 5th annual virtual Sjögren Summit that's coming this July. And that's where we're going to continue this type of conversation. Our theme this year is Stronger with Sjögren's. We're bringing together world-class experts. We're going to be tackling cutting edge research and really sharing real world tools for your actual life. It's virtual, it's interactive. Sessions will be recorded though, so if you can't attend like at that second, no problem. The waitlist link is in the description. It'll take you less than 30 seconds so that you stay in the loop, and we would love to see you there. All right, so this is what you can do with today's information. Let's tie this up with some action. There are 4 steps that we're going to go through, and we're going to follow the Immune Confident Framework as our guide, because this is how change can actually happen. So the first is recognize. Stop explaining your symptoms as separate problems to separate specialists. Your fatigue, your racing heart, your GI issues, your brain fog, those signals all come from the same terrain. And that recognition alone changes what you ask for, who you ask. Your symptoms are clues, and now this understanding is going to help you have a little bit clearer map in that recognition. Next, reclaim. At your next appointment, try reframing it this way. I have symptoms across multiple symptoms that may share a common neuroimmune mechanism. What testing would help us look at the full picture? You can write that down, you can bring it with you, you don't have to memorize it, you can have it in front of you, and that one sentence will help move you from describing symptoms to connecting the dots. Now, our third is rebel. If you get pushback, which you very well may, if you are with your primary care physician or another specialist, this may be way out of their comfort zone and out of their area of expertise. But what you can do is you can say, hey, I realize that, but do you have someone that you know, or could you ask, like, who can I connect with to help me keep moving this ball forward? Because I am experiencing XYZ. This is how my symptoms are impacting my day-to-day life and not allowing me to live the life that I want to be living. And last is rise. This is a long game. And at this point in time, we don't have specific cures. I'm not talking today about, having to make a dramatic overhaul, because frankly, I find that approach to be really overwhelming, both personally, and I see it overwhelming my patients. A body, though, that is no longer stuck in the storm, that has some tools, a team, a map to navigate what comes next with a bit more confidence rather than fear, that's what you're working towards. And you don't have to do that alone. You just need to take one step at a time, and that next best step. And you can start with those little, even just writing down that little phrase, that could be your effort for today. So before I send you anywhere, I just want to say this last thing. If you have spent years being told that what you experience is anxiety or stress or something you brought upon yourself, that narrative was not supported by science. It was supported by the limits of the tools being used to look at you, but the science has moved, it's evolved, and it's changed. And what it is finding is exactly what you've been describing all along. Your fatigue is real. Your autonomic symptoms are real. Your multi-system picture is real. You're not making it up, and you're not exaggerating. And frankly, you weren't difficult to start with. You were right. And you're not broken. Your body is adaptive, and it's been responding, albeit imperfectly and painfully, to a storm that it just didn't have the tools to calm down on its own. And that, I think, is where I see some hope, is the research is actually starting to name that. And naming it truly is the first step towards changing it and improving the tools we have to help address it. Before I go, we have 3 resources in the description that I think are worth bookmarking. The first, we have a quick little quiz called the IC Indicator. It takes about 2 minutes, and it gives you a starting picture to give you a little bit more of an idea where your immune health currently stands. It's a series of questions that asks about symptoms that are typically caused by inflammation of different flavors across your body. We also have the free Immune Confident Lab Conversation Guide. If you've ever walked out of an appointment being told your labs are normal, but you're like, oh, but I don't feel normal, this is for you. These are the exact markers that are helpful to think and ask about as we're thinking a little more broadly about immune, metabolic, and heart terrain. Because when we live with chronic inflammatory conditions, the unfortunate reality is it does raise our risk of heart disease. So these are some specific questions to help guide your kind of long-term game planning when it comes to living with chronic inflammation. The free PDF link is in the description below. If you want to explore that full terrain map, immune, metabolic, cardiovascular labs, all looked at together, we have the Immune Confident Blueprint Checkup. Details are in the description. It works a little bit like Function Health in that get cash rates for labs. We put together a game plan for you with our team. It is an educational endeavor, so you're not establishing a physician-patient relationship, but there's more information there. Save this video, send it to someone who is still looking for language to explain what their body is doing. And if this kind of content helps you, hit subscribe. This is exactly why this channel is here, what it's for. We have new videos every week. We're bringing, the latest and greatest papers, lived experience, clinical experience with just a tiny bit of fluff. And until next time, I wish you well. Take care.